The story for Lost Planet 3 is set long before Lost Planet 1 and follows colonist Jim Payton. Jim is pretty much a future miner and works for a construction company called Nevik. He is sent to the planet EDN-3, which is the planet from the past two games, to help mine the planet for thermal energy, which is becoming increasingly more profitable and helpful. His work is both dangerous and plenty cold, but he does it for his wife and young son that he has back on Earth. The job pays well, and even if the local inhabitants, the Acrid, which are these big bug-type creatures, make his job even harder. Now, the first half of the story is a slice of life as you follow Jim as he does his many objectives to get his job done and whatnot. Later on is when the game starts to have an actual story. Jim finds a long-lost Nevik base, which he never thought was there in the first place, and then the story starts to actually unfold from there. I really like the beginning because you get to know Jim, his situation, and his personality. Jim Payton is actually a really likable and strong character, surprisingly one of the best of this year. Some will find the beginning boring, but I found it to be a riveting and great slice of the life of a construction worker. When the story unfolds, Jim is already likable, as is the side characters that get introduced, so while what unfolds isn't amazing, it's still a great ride because of how well done the writing and performances are for the characters. Overall, great story with a strong lead character. But now let's talk about the sound. Voice acting is fantastic all around in Lost Planet 3. The performances are so surprisingly realistic and emotion-filled in the game that it actually blew me away at times. I was not expecting that from a Lost Planet game. The voice actor for Jim did a wonderful job of portraying this lonely but energetic and fun character. The rest of the voice acting is top-notch as well. The sound design is great as well because it makes this environment sound very lonely and hostile. The quiet times are the most threatening and lonely feeling, and the only sound you hear is the wind flying past you and maybe a creature trying to attack you. It sets the world up to be very atmospheric. Now, the gun battles and the enemies all sound good as well, but the atmosphere is what sealed the deal for me. Soundtrack is used when fighting giant bosses or even when traveling around in your rig. The music in the rig is almost all country, which fits the way the character looks and is. I think the soundtrack is great, but the quieter moments are still my favorites. Overall, the sound here is damn good. But now let's talk about the graphics. Lost Planet 3 is a nice looking game with only a couple of slight problems. The world of EDN3 is covered in snow and ice, which limits the color palette to blues and white. Though limited, the colors are used very well here, and the snow and ice covered environments all look really great. Now, the inside environments do have a generic look to them, but at times it does feel good to see something that isn't just two colors. Also, they do mix the outside with the inside, meaning that if there's a big hole in the wall of a building, then a lot of snow will come through, and it actually looks pretty cool to see that inside a building. Character models are a hit and miss because while they do look very good and the animations are pretty realistic, there are a lot of times where the eyes or even the expressions on the faces looked rather dead. That's a problem, especially since the performances are usually fantastic in the game. The Acrid creatures are both creepy looking and uniquely designed. Some creatures can be 50 feet tall and use ice on its back as a shield, others are covered in pointy legs which make them faster and more dangerous. The designs are neat and the animations are great, but they do repeat the same creatures way too often. The gameplay never lags and I never encountered any glitches either. It's a very good looking game overall, but it does have its slight problems here or there, so there you go. Graphically, it looks good. Now let's talk about the gameplay. Lost Planet 3 is a semi-open world third-person shooter set on an ice planet that is filled with the Acrid, which, like I said before, are the aliens that inhabit this world. As Jim Payton, you are stationed on a base where you can talk to many people in it and either get new jobs from them or even buy stuff like new weapons, new attachments for your weapons, or even upgrades for your rig, which I'll talk about in a second. And just like an open world game, you have main missions and you have side missions. The side missions will let you acquire money or thermal energy in this game, so you can buy new stuff like new attachments for your weapons or just brand new weapons in general. And some of these side missions range from you collecting things or doing a favor for someone or killing a certain amount of enemies or whatnot. It's pretty standard stuff. And the main missions, of course, just progress the story along. Like I said, the world is a semi-open world, which is allowed to be explored outside of missions. Now, a lot of areas are locked straight off the bat, and a lot of these environments don't have much in them, so exploring isn't really necessary at all. That is disappointing because the world seems so interesting, and I would love to be able to explore a Fallout 3 sized map of it. That would be cool. Now, in your adventures, you will have to fight off the Acrid plenty of times. Luckily, the gunplay is very tight and responsive, but I do feel that it does get repetitive at times, especially when missions go on for 30-40 minutes and all you're doing is blasting away the same aliens over and over again. It gets very, very repetitive. When it comes to smaller 10 to 20 minute missions, then it's no problem, but after a while, it just becomes boring. Besides the gunplay, you also have your rig, which is a big construction mech, kind of like the one in the movie Aliens. Remember that scene where Sigourney Weaver's all like, "Get away from her, you bitch"? Kind of like that one. And kind of like the Aliens mech, this one does not have any guns attached to it, even though the Aliens one had a flamethrower, so that kind of sucks. But this one actually can use its brute force to attack the Acrid either with its arms, legs, drill arm, or grappling hook. That's right, you didn't have a drill arm, did you, aliens? No. This does. So, Now, the rig combat, when you're fighting a really big Acrid or you're fighting a lot of them, it takes some time to get used to because you'll need to counter moves and attack at the right opportunity, and if you don't, then your rig will go down. But when you get used to it, the rig is very enjoyable to use to squash the Acrid menace. Also, it helps you travel around faster in the world and comes with a built-in list of good old country music. And I didn't mention this earlier, but fighting a huge Acrid monster on either foot or in a rig is very exciting and, I dare say it, epic. These parts don't feel repetitive at all and are easily the best parts of the single player, and you do fight them a lot. There are a lot of big creatures for you to fight, so don't think it only happens like once or twice. It's a good maybe 8 or 9 times you fight big creatures. So the single player is a very lengthy one. It's about 12 to 14 hours long if you take your time and do the side missions as well. It's a fun romp, especially since the story is so engaging, but like I said, it does get really repetitive at times, and while the gunplay is responsive, tight, and fulfilling, it isn't the best out there at all. Also, the weapons could have been a little bit more inventive. The most unique gun you get is a crossbow. Woohoo! Now, besides the single player, you also have the competitive multiplayer, which is standard 5v5 deathmatch and objective modes, but also includes an Acrid survival mode, which is a 3v3 and mixes a horde mode with a competitive multiplayer mode, which I found to be unique and actually kind of fun. To be honest, I found the entire multiplayer section to be very entertaining because of the progression system, which allows you to buy new weapons and attachments with money you acquire in the multiplayer, and that the gunplay doesn't actually become repetitive because you're fighting real human players. Also, in the multiplayer, you can use mechs, which are different from rigs because they have guns, missiles, and machine guns, and they're very easy to control and a lot of fun, and can actually tip the turn in your favor if you get one. So definitely use the mechs if you play this game. Overall, I think Lost Planet 3 is a very good package. The single player, while repetitive at times, is solid and engaging with its story, and the multiplayer, while nothing special, is tons of fun. Lost Planet 3 is not getting the best reviews out there right now, but I'll tell you this, I enjoyed it a lot and it is currently my favorite in the series. So take that for whatever it's worth, which isn't much because I don't really care for the series that much. But anyway, this is a really fun game. Definitely go check out Lost Planet, rent it, buy it, whatever you want to do. I highly recommend it. Thank you and goodbye.